Well, welcome to F5 Podcast. It's been a while, and I'm Justin Rosenberg, and this is sponsored by Operation Code.
And I'm Colin Phillips.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about how you got into computer science. Let's start there.
All right. So I took some computer science courses in classes in high school.
In high school, okay.
In high school, yeah. Back in the day when it was, pre-PC, so we were working on Commodore PETs.
Okay.
Prior to the Commodore 64 even.
Wow. So what's PAT stand for? Do you know?
I have no idea, actually. but I do know that the first ones I was working on had 4K of RAM.
Okay.
4K of RAM. Not M, K. So, but I really loved it. We were using BASIC, basically, and then I think in my senior year of high school, we had an Apple II lab.
Right.
They put in. I really enjoyed those classes. I was in the computer science club and stuff like that. Then when I went to college, I started on a pre-med track. So I was doing basically the normal pre-med stuff. So biology, chemistry, physics, math courses, stuff like that. So, and then after a couple of years, I decided I did not want to be a doctor. And so I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? So I kind of reached back into my high school career and said,
right.
What was it that I really enjoyed?
Yeah.
And I enrolled in the School of Computer Science instead.
Okay.
And
that's the same college?
Same college. That was Carleton University in Canada. And then I went on to do a master's degree in computer science at the University of Victoria.
Okay.
Also in Canada. So
you're a non-traditional Operation Code member because you're Canadian.
I am Canadian. Yes. Yeah.
So talk to me about your military experience.
Yeah, so my military experience also in Canada. I was in the Army Reserve in when I kind of the end of high school and into college.
Okay.
So the way the Army Reserve works in Canada is it's kind of sort of similar to the National Guard here, in that you go in maybe a couple nights a week, and occasional weekend you'll have an exercise or something like that. And then basically it was kind of full-time in the summer.
Okay.
Which was great. And I was in it for 5.5 years.
Okay.
And the first several years I was non-commissioned.
What does that mean?
So that means not officer.
Okay.
So there's the non-commissioned ranks and there's commissioned ranks, which are officer ranks. So anyway, I started out non-commissioned. I made it up to basically the first kind of level of a leadership role, which was in Canada it's called Master Corporal.
Okay.
And then I switched to officer mostly because I really wanted to take this officer training course.
Okay.
Which was called the Reserve Entry Scheme Officer course, or RESO.
Okay.
Which was 14 weeks it was in a place called Camp Petawawa, and it was basically training with the Canadian Airborne Regiment.
Okay.
Which was intense.
So you actually just wanted to go to it because of the training?
Yeah,
that seems odd.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, that was my favorite part of being in the Army was I loved the courses. I loved the training.
So you had a certain passion for learning then.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also very mentally and physically challenging.
Mm-hmm.
The RESO course started with 88 people. We graduated about 25.
Wow.
And I finished third. So
congratulations.
Thank
That's pretty good.
Good. Yeah.
Well, the people that left, was it leaving because they couldn't do the physical, or they couldn't do the course, or
there were a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Physically it was very challenging, and there were a bunch of people who left with injuries.
Oh wow.
Yeah. A bunch of broken bones, dislocations, stuff like that. And there were a bunch of people who just, it was, you don't sleep very much. You're always under stress. And there are a lot of people who just are like, nah, I'm out of here. So there were a lot of people voluntarily leave.
Right. So when did you end your military career versus when you graduate college, or was it about the same? Because you went for your master's.
Right. So I ended up I was in the reserve until December of 1989.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. And
there won't be a quiz later. Don't worry.
At the time, I was in this co-op computer science program.
Okay.
That's what they called it. But basically, it was a 4-year degree, where you take 5 years to do it.
Okay.
But you also get at least 16 months of work experience.
Okay.
Kind of blended in.
Okay.
It's kind of facilitated by the school. So employers actually come to the school to interview candidates, and you do these work terms.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I had a work term coming up in January of 1990 that was basically on the other side of the country. So I went from Ottawa to Vancouver for this work term.
Okay.
So I couldn't stay in the reserves. I could have transferred to a reserve unit out in Vancouver. Okay. But it was like, it's just me too much hassle.
So Vancouver's in America? No.
Vancouver, Canada.
Okay.
It's all Canada still.
Okay.
Yeah. So I lived in Canada till I was about 30 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you, what was that job like? That first job?
Yeah, the first job was great. It was at a place called the National Research Council.
Okay.
Which is kind of like DARPA mixed with National Science Foundation here.
Wow, that's cool.
Kind of a blend of those two.
Mm-hmm.
So basically doing basic research, but also applied research.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of on the applied research side. It was in a language called Smalltalk. Which,
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's a predecessor to Java, I would say.
Predecessor. It was basically I wouldn't say the first object-oriented language, but probably the first popularized object-oriented language. It came out of Xerox PARC.
Okay.
Alan Kay invented it. But
yeah.
Anyway, so it goes back to the 1960s.
Right.
1968, I think. But in any case, I was working in Smalltalk. The school I was at was actually teaching Smalltalk to undergrads.
Okay.
Which was pretty unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I was working on basically some decision support systems for primary industries. So the first one was for a place that basically towed log booms up and down the coast of British Columbia.
What's a log boom?
So in forestry, the easiest way to move massive numbers of logs is to throw them in the water, tie them all together, and tow them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a log.
You can move. Yeah, it's called a log boom.
Okay.
So they'll do those on rivers or in the ocean or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, this place was doing that. They were. So they had all these kind of very large tugboats, they look like,
mm-hmm.
Towing massive weight with all these logs. And they basically needed a decision support system for crew scheduling.
Okay.
So that was the application I worked on there.
That's cool. So what brought you to America?
So the last work term I had at university was with a company called Object Technology International.
Okay.
They were making compilers, development IDEs, stuff like that for initially Smalltalk and then Java.
Okay, wow.
That company basically was bought by IBM.
Okay.
And became the nucleus of the Eclipse Foundation.
Yeah, IntelliJ and then not IntelliJ, Visual Age for Java.
Visual Age for Java.
Yeah,
I worked on Visual Age for Java.
I used Visual Age for Java.
Yeah.
My first job.
Written in Smalltalk.
I didn't code in Smalltalk.
Well, you didn't have to.
Yeah, but
you code in Java, but we wrote the thing in Smalltalk.
Okay.
But anyway, Eclipse, which I think was probably named because it was for Java but written in Java.
Okay.
So that kind of eclipsed the whole Smalltalk thing.
Yeah.
I guess. Who knows? I don't know actually what the genesis of the name was, but in any case, that became the Eclipse Foundation, which is still a thing today.
Yeah. That's cool.
So anyway, I left basically to finish my master's thesis. I took all my coursework while I was working, did my master's thesis full time. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, what now? And a mentor of mine had been doing some like independent contracting work in the United States. He made some introductions. I got a job in New York, and that was kind of the first job I had in America. I worked at Brooklyn Union Gas in New York. I stayed there a little over a year. My wife at the time wasn't that interested in living in the city, so she wanted somewhere a little bit greener. So looked around, ended up taking another contract, but here in Kansas City, at Sprint.
Okay. And everybody works at Sprint that lives in Kansas City.
At some point. Now T-Mobile. Now everyone works at T-Mobile.
Yeah. Well, and then Cerner too,
or
Garmin,
Cerner, or Block, or
yeah,
whichever. Yeah, there are a few that everybody kind of makes a rotation through.
Yep.
But yeah, so I continued contracting, got divorced, remarried. My wife and I, basically right after we got married, moved to London.
Okay, wow.
I was still contracting. I had a remote job at the time. I was working for a place called Oak Grove Systems, which was based in California, but I was doing it from Kansas City. I basically took that job with me to London. And then I had a friend who was doing a PhD at Oxford, who was also working at a contract in London, and he was planning to move back to North America, so we effectively swapped jobs. He took the Oak Grove job.
Right.
I went to the London Clearinghouse where he'd been working.
Right.
So I worked there for a while until that project imploded, I guess is probably the correct word. So then I moved on to a couple other banks. Moved on to Credit Suisse briefly. That place was so completely dysfunctional that I couldn't wait to get out of there. Yep. But anyway, jumped to another contract at UBS. I think I had like a 3-month contract with Credit Suisse. Okay. And then they wanted to renew, but I was like, no, thank you. It was terrible. But
didn't they go bankrupt eventually?
Recently? Yes, recently, which was weird because they were definitely the ascendant Swiss bank at the time.
Yeah.
At the time, UBS was definitely the second fiddle in that, but I guess one of their executives somehow screwed it up. So anyway, UBS basically bought them for parts.
Yeah. Cheap.
Yeah, cheap.
So let's fast forward to Operation Code and the organization. So we both know Jim, and Jim founded the organization.
The Kansas City chapter.
Kansas City chapter.
Yeah,
not the entire organization. Sorry.
So right about the time, I moved back to Kansas City. I was living in Connecticut. Okay. I was working for UBS full time. Then left and started doing startups. But anyway, I was at a point where I didn't need to be in any particular place.
Right.
I could work from wherever. So my wife's family is kind of all in the Midwest, so we moved back to Kansas City, which we both really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So we moved back in 2018. I stayed connected with Jim throughout the years. I worked with him at Sprint.
Okay.
Anyway, he reached out to me because he knew I had a military background, and knew that I was, like to be kind of active in the community and whatnot. So anyway, we got together and talked through starting the Operation Code chapter in Kansas City, which was great. At first, we didn't really know what we were doing, and we tried to treat it like, I guess a more kind of theme focused meetup, right? Like a or whatever you meetup,
like a talk or something.
Yeah,
similar to the Java user group, which Jim was involved with.
Exactly. So we initially kind of started there. Tried to organize some programming where we would have a speaker and people would come and listen to the speaker. And that really never took hold.
Right.
We had some people who were interested in the talk, but we certainly weren't attracting any veterans.
Right.
Or military families. And we really weren't attracting too many people who, were kind of starting out in their careers, period. So in any case, eventually, I don't know how it even happened, but eventually we started just meeting at a coffee shop on Saturdays.
Yep.
Maybe it was your idea. I don't know.
No, actually, the owner of the coffee shop is friends with Jim.
Right.
And used to be a programmer. So Jim, we go through...
He was like a centric instructor too, right?
Yeah. So that's how he got that position. Even though we just go during regular business hours, we didn't need a special permission to use them.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So that is kind of when things I think really started to click.
Right.
Was when we were just meeting people at a location regularly.
Yes.
Once a week, we'd meet people. Whoever showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever needed help, had questions with whatever, interview prep, resumes, coding problems. We ended up attracting a lot of people who were taking boot camps.
Mm-hmm.
And some people who genuinely wanted technical help, to kind of help them through all the massive amount of homework you get in a boot camp.
Yes.
And then some people who basically just needed therapy. Because they were under a lot of stress.
Yes.
And they just needed to be kind of talked off the ledge. Just stick with it. You've got this. You're understanding the material.
Right.
You only have 10 weeks left, and then you're gonna graduate.
Right.
And then the world is your oyster after that, right? and I think we've actually been really successful in helping people through boot camps, and we've had a bunch of people get jobs after boot camps, which has been great.
It's been really successful. Why don't you talk a little bit about Camden?
Yeah, so Cam was one of the earlier people. I guess our first person was the other Justin.
Justin Cummings.
Justin Cummings actually was, in a lot of ways, the catalyst for us actually attracting other veterans.
He's so outgoing and such a salesperson.
Right. So he was talking up this group, Operation Code, and he had this friend Cam. So Cam started coming. Cam took the leap. They were both veterans. They had both they were both working cold call sales jobs.
Yes.
So yeah, anyway, Cam took the leap first.
Mm-hmm.
He quit his job. He came up with the money for a boot camp, which partially he got. He had a little bit of. He'd already done a degree, but he had a little bit of money left from military.
Yeah.
GI Bill money. Anyway, he enrolled in this boot camp. Centric boot camp. Finished the Centric boot camp in 2020. So started it pre-COVID, finished it post-COVID.
Of course.
During COVID, I guess. And both of us tried to hire him.
Yes, we did.
And I won.
You're the winner.
But he came to work. With me at Edgeworth Box, which is I was a CTO and co-founder of Edgeworth Box.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, turned out that at least I'd say the only great success that Edgeworth Box ever had was Cam.
Because he turned from someone who just goes to boot camp to someone who is highly marketable afterwards.
Absolutely. And because there were literally just two of us on the technology team, and we had a full stack. We had React and Node, a MySQL database, an Elasticsearch database, and then infrastructure on AWS.
Yeah.
So because there were two of us, he had to kind of learn all of that.
Yes. And AWS is a little hard for someone who's just coming up.
Right. Yeah. But one of the last things we worked on together was was infrastructure as code, writing in the Cloud Development Kit, which is basically JavaScript that generates CloudFormation templates. And, we had our development environment, basically we would have on a cron job, and we'd spin it up every day at 8 a.m. and take it down every day at 6 p.m. So we weren't paying for it overnight.
Yes.
So, and then it wouldn't run on the weekends unless we wanted it to. We could just spin it up manually if we had some work to do. But that was great. And honestly, Cam did most of that.
Right.
So, great learning experience that he basically translated into, another development job where he could command some decent money.
Yeah, definitely. And the JavaScript, React, and Node.js was exactly what that company that he works for does. And so I would love to interview him.
Yeah.
And Justin, come on down.
Come on, Justin, Cam. Maybe we could do both at the same time. Yeah. Cam wouldn't get a word in. This is true. We love you, Justin. You're the man. But
so go ahead. Sorry.
But boy, that guy can talk.
Yes.
He is good at it, which is why he's a sales engineer.
Yes. He found his niche.
He found his niche, and his niche is good. Perfect for him.
Yeah. I was going to say something.
All right.
I also hired a previous guest at this, Chris Dio.
Yeah, good.
And he was another successful person. I hired him as an intern, and he successfully migrated us from SVN to Git. And I won't don't look at the year.
Yeah.
But he was successful in that, and then he was hired on a different team to do Python work.
Yeah.
So I think it's great, and also the future is bright if he develops a repertoire for working at CRL, and he can join either a Java team or a .NET team or a JavaScript team or a PHP team if he wants to do modern PHP.
Yeah. I think the other kind of remarkable thing about Chris is he had a career in the Army, and then he had a bunch of other careers after that. None of them particularly technical,
right?
Except for some of them were more mechanical, I guess.
Right.
But he kind of came to coding later in life than your typical 20-something that might be graduating from boot camp. But he's got grandkids, and so that's kind of another obstacle to overcome.
Right.
Is making such a huge career change.
Right. Well, it goes back to the learning. Right. That is such a key part of programming, because there's so much change that's happening even faster now. The releases are faster. Like, I'm a Java programmer, and I remember when it was several years before the next version of Java comes out, and now every 6 months there's a new version of Java, and I just got a 17 approved, and there's already 21 that's released. That's a long-term support version. And we could even talk about AI and the impact it's having on our industry.
Yeah, for sure. You want to do that? Talk about AI?
Sure.
All right.
Let's talk about AI, and then we'll wrap it up.
I mean, I think that it's been kind of, I've been doing some kind of tangential AI projects.
Right.
At Arcos Golf, where I was, we built an AI caddy.
Okay.
So it basically predicts the optimal way for you to play a golf hole based on your own statistics.
Okay.
The layout of the course, statistics for handicap or people who have similar handicaps to you. All of that kind of feeds into a set of models, and outcomes, you should hit driver 7 iron, and you'll likely get down in about 4.8 strokes, let's say. So that was one thing, and then I did another thing more recently, which was computer vision related. With driver technologies, basically using computer vision models to predict whether or not you're going to hit a car in front of you, or whether you're drowsy or distracted or whatever. So that's all been kind of really interesting and productive. I think the part of AI that's a bit more of an unknown right now is this whole generative AI. How is that going to impact coding jobs?
Yeah.
Right?
The large language model, and then also the generative AI of like Copilot.
Right.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, so I think right now it's at best additive in that it might help a developer speed up their process. But isn't really capable yet. Yet's the operative word.
Yeah.
Of writing a complex system by itself.
Right.
Or translating those requirements into code that actually fulfills the requirements.
Right.
And I've played around with it a little bit, and you get something that's kind of sort of, if you
almost
squint,
correct,
kind of close. For example, if you tell it to write Swift for an iOS app.
Okay.
And let's say you want it to write a stopwatch.
Okay.
Right. And show you an analog clock with like a secondhand ticking and all this sort of stuff. It'll show you something that looks kind of like an analog clock. But the secondhand, for example, this one example that I saw on the internet. The second hand, once it reached 60, it would rewind back to 1 and then start ticking again. It's like, okay, well, I guess technically they got it right, but the animation's a little bit off. And that was after quite a bit of iteration.
Right. You have to prompt engineer.
Right.
And say exactly the right thing and the right response.
Yeah, so I think if you were to kind of transplant that technology as it exists today, into a business environment where you've got all this ambiguity, I think you'd end up with the wrong stuff.
Well, let's circle back to Operation Code and the current industry recession, if you will. Not a full-blown recession, but our industry has gone through a significant recession, at least compared to like 2021.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to a new developer that comes out of boot camp? Like what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so the job market is really hard right now. It's hard. I mean, it's hard for senior people. With decades of experience and very marketable language skills and all this sort of stuff. So definitely very hard for entry-level people. Our industry is 100% in recession. We've definitely had shrinking opportunities, but also kind of even a shrinking workforce if you kind of count all the the FANG layoffs and whatnot. So, I'd say my advice to someone who is graduating boot camp right now and is looking for a job is, this too shall pass. Okay.
My father used to tell me that. It was
Mine
a great
too.
Jewish.
That is one of my father's favorite lines.
Yes, and it's really helpful. Like whenever you're really in a bad spot, or just whenever you're really happy,
this too shall pass.
This too shall pass. So please continue. Yeah.
So, anyway, it's going to be really difficult,
right,
to find a job right now. Keep trying,
right,
but also
don't give up.
Don't give up, but also don't give up on yourself, and don't give up on your learning and your training, and your continue to build out that GitHub repository.
Right.
Of projects. find some open source project that you're interested in, be a contributor.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that commit history on an open source project. Keep learning. Mm-hmm. Just in general, keep taking online courses. There's tons of free ones.
Yeah, there are.
And pretend you're an actor because you might need another job, right, to pay the bills. So
right.
If you have to go wait tables for 6 months while you wait for that technology job, that's totally cool.
Yeah.
Go wait tables. Continue building up that resume and your GitHub repo and your learning and all that sort of stuff, because at some point in the future, the floodgates are going to open and everybody's going to be hiring, and you want to be in the right position when that happens.
Right. Hopefully next year.
Hopefully soon.
All right, I got one last question.
All right.
That I didn't prep you on.
Oh, perfect.
Yes. So I like the Lex Freeman podcast, and something that he asks his guests, and he hasn't done it lately, but I like it when he asks, what is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? Well, I could cop out and say 42.
Yes. Great author.
Yeah. I think for people, it's be your best self, continue to improve yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Try to see the best in others, contribute, give back.
Mm-hmm.
And enjoy the journey. Because I think too many people get kind of focused on a goal,
right?
And then I'm 100% guilty of this, and then they kind of don't really enjoy the journey,
right?
And then they get
it's all they're paying, like for instance, they might work a job that's crappy, and they're like, but I can make more doing this job than another job. And then they work until they retire, and then they get sick and die. Like, right. Horrible.
Yeah.
But my father, I mean, when he retired from IRS, it was because his vision was so bad.
Right.
And his body was wrecked with diabetes, and he didn't get a chance to retire and really enjoy life. And so that's a lesson I learned from him, is that you should go on vacations now.
Go on vacations now. If you're in a job that you hate, change your job.
Yeah.
If if you're doing something you love, the money will come.
Yeah.
Or maybe the money's not even that important. As long as you can put a roof over your head and food in your belly and you're loving life.
Yeah.
That's great. I have a friend who was in a sales job and hated it. And then when he was almost 60 years old, he went and worked as a Starbucks barista.
He liked it?
He loved it. And Starbucks provided healthcare.
Yeah.
So he was working full-time at a Starbucks, loved all that interaction with people.
Yeah.
And he had healthcare until he reached 65.
Yeah.
So
that's an excellent story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining this F5 Operation Podcast.
And it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
See you later.
For sure.